Apologies for all the noise that Greg Evans is making in the lead up there over the top of the intro music. Completely ruined the intro music for those intro music enthusiasts. Really, really disappointing to hear. It's Monday. It's 1874. It's time for the podcast, and we get to talk about an Aston Villa win because Villa dispatched Chelsea 2-1 Saturday tea time. A thoroughly enjoyable evening at Villa Park. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics man of all trades, jack of all trades, Greg Evans, who still is just moving around profusely whilst I'm talking, which is very, very unprofessional. And we're here to talk about the game that I just mentioned. This show, as always, is sponsored by NordVPN. If you go to 1874.io/NordVPN, you'll get a huge discount plus 4 months free, and it's completely risk-free as well because Nord offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and we'll hear a little bit more about Nord later on in the show. Greg, just out of interest, what made you decide to move house as the podcast started there?
Oh, well, to be honest, it's just a bit dark in here. It's a bit of a gloomy, grey morning, isn't it? So I thought I'd put the lights on, simple as that.
Okay, made a lot of noise doing it, so fair play to you, credit to you there. What is not going to be gloomy is this podcast, Greg, because Villa won at the weekend. Was it the first win in 5 or 4? It feels like a while since Villa won a game of Premier League football, but they did, and they left it very late against Chelsea. But disappointing first half, absolutely great second half attacking the whole end. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But what did you make of the game overall?
Yeah, it was quite fitting, wasn't it, in terms of how Villa have been playing in recent weeks. Quite slow to start with, not so great in the first half, but then much better in the second half. I thought they played really, really well. Rashford comes on and makes a difference, doesn't he? Didn't think he was great against Liverpool, although he did a lot of Villa's attacks did go down that side, and he seems to be a real threat now. But yeah, look, a good performance, a good week in general for Villa, wasn't it? They needed to look. We talked this time last week. We were saying how disappointed Villa were after failing to beat Ipswich, but the caveat was that if they could go and get 4 or 6 points against Liverpool and Chelsea combined, then it would be quickly forgotten about. And it has been, hasn't it? Because it has now been a very good week for Villa.
Yeah, 5 points was probably the minimum that Villa could have accepted in a busy week of football. 3 home games in the Premier League is actually a massive opportunity to do something, because that back-to-backs in the Premier League in particular, that's what gets you up the league. That's what moves you about. But I think a lot of people, if you'd have said Villa are going to get 5 points from those 3 games, you'd have probably just expected that they'd beaten Ipswich and drawn the other 2. Of course, this is Aston Villa, so they do it in a frustrating way by drawing with Ipswich, putting in a good performance, and drawing with Liverpool, and then beating Chelsea. Actually winning the last game of that 3-game run might be something that's beneficial, and it will certainly be beneficial going into Tuesday.
Oh, it's going to give them a lift, isn't it? A win's a win at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how fortunate it might have been or how they come about. The 2 goals are well worked goals, but the actual execution of them, they're quite lucky in some ways, aren't they? Asensio nearly missed the first one, and the second one slipped through the goalkeeper's legs. So, but it doesn't matter, because this time last week, again, I'll go back to it. We were talking about the amount of chances Villa created against Ipswich, couldn't put the ball in the net. Speak to Villa fans; they don't care how the ball goes in as long as they score, and that's what they did at the weekend. And I just think it was a really, really positive weekend for Villa in terms of how all the other results kind of went for them. I think there's only 2 teams in the current top 8 who won. Liverpool, top of the league, who are miles clear of everybody now, and are in a different league effectively, aren't they? No, but the rest of the Premier League are not playing against Liverpool anymore.
No, it's done.
It's pretty much done, you'd say. So every team now is fighting for every other position, and Villa are right in there now. This again. Sorry to keep going back to this time last week. But this time last week, I was starting to become concerned about whether Villa could finish in the top 5. But now the outlook looks completely different, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's rewind to the start of the game then, Greg. I was a little bit surprised by the team selection. Obviously, it's an Unai masterclass and everything he's done's worked perfectly. But I actually wasn't expecting Asensio to start this game. I thought Rashford would start, maybe Marlon would come in. But I thought against one of the bigger Premier League teams, I thought maybe Asensio would be left out and used as an impact player. Turned out it was the other way around. Rashford was left out and used as an impact player, and Asensio, as we know, played 90 minutes. Were you surprised by the team selection? Obviously, it was handy Konsa came back because Dizazi couldn't play. Matty Cash came back in as well. Was there anything in there that majorly surprised you? Did you feel the same as me?
Uh, yeah, Asensio, I suppose, was the only one that really surprised me. I thought Cash would come back just because Garcia didn't have the best game against Liverpool. I thought going forward he was good again, but just defensively still getting used to what is required to play in this Villa team, I think, and Emery knows that. So didn't really surprise me the defence. Great that Konza was able to come back. Um, but yeah, Asensio, because all the messages I've been hearing leading up to the game was that Asensio was just still a little bit behind Rashford in terms of their fitness and their how prepared they were, because he hadn't played too many games for PSG, had he, before he arrived
No.
to Villa. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Rashford and Asensio now are deemed this like double act, aren't they? They're everything is compared as a double, as a pair. They're not getting identified singly. It seems like when they're scoring goals, there's a real clear connection between the two already. Perhaps because they are the new guys and they're trying to fit in to an extent. But it feels like we're comparing the two of them a lot. Now, did he have a great game? Not totally convinced. I thought he was quite quiet at times. The thing that I like about Asensio though is he's going to occupy defenders, and he can always produce that moment of magic. And it's going to be so hard to defend against now. And Villa have got more and more players that are occupying people now, whereas they're a threat, aren't they, all the time? Even if they're not performing very well, that at some point they're going to turn it on and do something, and that could change the game. But I'm talking about a player who thought didn't play that well, yet he comes out with 2 goals.
Big game player, big
Yeah,
game players turn up in the big moments, don't they? I guess
100%. And look, that is what Asensio is. Played for Real Madrid, had some wonderful moments with them, in very big games, and obviously played for PSG as well. So he's a big game player, and he will turn up in the big moments. And the same for Rashford as well. Rashford can be a world class player. We've seen when he's on it, he is world class. We haven't seen enough of it of recent years, admittedly, but when he's on it, he's good enough. So there's a chance and there's an opportunity for him to get that back at Villa.
Yeah, David Stiles says here, there's something about the way that Asensio moves. You can just tell he's got absolute quality. And there was actually forgive me, I cannot remember who wrote it. I read yesterday. There was a piece on The Athletic around Asensio's movement and the clever spaces that he occupied and how he pulled defenders around. So if you are subscribed to The Athletic, it's definitely worth going and having a read of that. I actually made a mistake there. I mentioned that there was no surprises in the team selection, but actually there was one at left back, because Ian Martson played over Luca Dean against his old team, which I wasn't particularly expecting. He was getting quite a lot of stick in the early exchanges of the game, particularly from the Holt end where I sit. I'm not convinced the first goal is massively his fault, but that's for people to debate amongst themselves. The goal has come down his side. I'm not going to do it because we've done it to death. Villa have again conceded the first shot in the game from the opposition. The first attack has turned into a goal, and I'm not going to do. Villa can't keep a clean sheet. It's becoming a real problem because, to be honest, Greg, I'm getting fed up of doing that, and I'm sure you are as well. But if we just analyse the goal as a whole, I actually thought Chelsea's setup was okay. I quite liked what they did, and it did cause Villa problems in the first half, with Neto kind of playing as the central striker, playing as the number 9, but having that license to roam around and pick up the ball and drift. And I thought he did really well as a number 9 for Chelsea in that first half. And then what that enabled them to do was have Cole Palmer play as a right-hand side number 10. But he could come inside and occupy the space that he wanted to occupy. I thought Villa struggled to get to grips with that in the early exchanges of the game. But there's no doubt, and I think this is a trend in football generally, that defenders sometimes don't want to defend. I think they let attackers travel too far, and Villa definitely let Neto travel too far into the penalty area, and he squared it. And Enzo Fernandez, who only seems to score against Villa, has scored his 3rd goal in as many games against the club, and they've gone 1-0 up. How did you see that goal from a defensive perspective from Villa?
Yeah, you're right about Fernandez. He always seems to turn up against Villa, doesn't he? incredible.
Very
And
annoying, actually, Greg.
he had another chance as well, didn't he? That just went over the bar. So, yeah, he always seems to play quite well. But I suppose for £100 million player or whatever he was, you expect him to have good games anyway. It's quite interesting to see the exchange between him and Martinez at the end. Martinez clearly very compassionate towards him, but I don't think he would have been that way if Villa had lost. So, but yeah, if you look back to the goal, I think Neto was excellent first half. In another world, he could have been playing in claret and blue.
Really? You've never said that before.
Yeah, if you read my book that's coming out later,
He doesn't around with the book plugs.
Later in the year, there'll be some more details on that and how that pursuit sort of ended or why it ended. But yeah, interesting player. I've always liked him ever since he moved to Wolves. Thought he's been a real handful. Watched lots of games where he's played really well, caused so many defenders problems. So it didn't surprise me that he was causing Martin problems. And look, without sounding like a broken record, I just think he's just not as good as a defender as Luca Dini's, unfortunately. And Villa are feeling that at times. And the relationship between him and Mings probably isn't quite there because they haven't played too many games together. The last couple of goals that Villa have conceded have been conceded from that side. Defensively, it wasn't good, but Villa have kept about 7 clean sheets now in 50 odd games, 50 Premier League games, something like. I mean, it's just not good enough. If you think back to a friend of mine who we exchange a lot of messages with during games and after games, he keeps pointing out that Villa's defensive record's been woeful since the famous double win over Manchester City and Arsenal.
Yeah, it has.
Correct, isn't it? There hasn't been too many clean sheets since those wins. And Villa are probably now at the stage where they're having to tweak things and they're having to go and outscore teams in a different way. That level of control that they once had, more so in Unai Emery's first season when they finished 7th. You think of the Mings and Konsa partnership was excellent at that point. They now know that they don't know that they're going to concede, but
I think we do.
No, I mean, look, no. As a team, you will never ever go out thinking that you're going to concede. So you have to outscore the opponents in that way. That will never be in the plan. But I do think that Villa are trying to now outscore opponents in a different type of way. They're trying to go more, well, if we can score more and we're going to let in, then it doesn't matter so much because it feels like the game plan's slightly changing.
I think you've touched on something within everything you just said there about, the relationships. I think when you're having to change your back four every single game, you're going to concede goals. There's going to be miscommunication. There's not those relationships there. There's not those patterns of play there. You don't anticipate where the other player is going to be next year because it's changing every game. I think that's just natural. Maybe if I'm being picky, Saturday would have been a chance to kind of go back to tried and trusted and play Luca Dean. And then you've got the back four of Cash, Konsa, Mings and Luca Dean who have all played together before. And maybe that alleviates problems a little bit more so than by playing Martin there. But Villa have spent a lot of money on Martin. At some point, he's going to have to play games and they're going to want him to play games. And they're working tirelessly behind the scenes on aspects of his game as well. So I'm sure he will come good because I think he is a real high-level player. I think when Villa become a bit more dominant themselves and when they're attacking and not having to defend as much as they are at the moment, I think he'll be really crucial in what they do. I suppose the warning signs were there before as well. Tyrone Mings made an outstanding block intervention before that goal as well. But Villa, they just don't tend to read warning signs early on in games, it feels like at the moment, and it does almost feel inevitable that they go 1-0 down. I do think for the rest of the first half, Villa were pretty good. They did try and make things happen. They did kind of play through Chelsea. I thought Chelsea's, as much as I think their attack worked, I thought it was a strange decision to play Reece James in central midfield, but they obviously wanted to get Enzo Fernandez a bit further forward, and I think that did cause Villa problems. But whilst it wasn't a rubbish first half, you just didn't feel like Villa were going to score in that first half, Greg?
No, I was watching on thinking the same, to be honest. I was a little bit surprised with James playing there, but it felt like it worked in the first half, certainly. Freed up a little bit more room for Enzo. And he caused some problems. I think if you think back to the Liverpool game as well, it was almost really unfortunate for Mings again because that deflected shot from Palmer, I think, wasn't it, just squeezed past the
Close.
post. And I mean, that was almost 2 games back to back where Mings has tried to make blocks on shots and both of them have gone into the nets and conceded. So that would have been incredibly unfortunate for him. I think, there's been a lot of talk about Mings. There's a lot of talk about Martin as well. I think that Villa are still trying to find out how they get the best out of him defensively, Martin, because it's just not quite there at the moment. I can understand why they're rotating as well because of so many games in such a short space of time. You can't keep playing the same players every week because you've seen what happens with Villa's injuries. Mings, I think, in his first return from injury, I don't think there was no drop off in his performances. I didn't think. Okay, there was the error against Bruges, but in terms of his on the ball with his feet performances, there was no real drop off. I didn't see it. I remember the Brentford game, excellent. He returned for that, didn't he? And you just think, wow, this guy's been out for 13 months or whatever it was, and he hasn't lost his pace. He hasn't lost his reading of his game. He's good on the ball. So that for me was more of a surprise because a player that had been out for so long, you're expecting some sort of a drop off. It's just natural. You think of Virgil van Dijk, who was the best defender in the world when he had his long injury and he came back. He wasn't the same for a season. Brilliant again now, mind you. Diego Carlos, when he had that long injury, needed time to recover, and perhaps wasn't ever the same player. So for Mings, his performances have not been too bad. I find it confuses me a little bit to think that Villa fans automatically think that they've outgrown him now. I've seen a lot of talk about Mings and Cash. Villa have outgrown those two now. I'm sorry, but I just have to disagree. I think these are 2 players that have been a big part of the journey that have helped Villa get to where they are. What I would say is if Villa fans think they have outgrown those 2 now, going to be having to spend an incredible amount of money to get better than those 2. It's going to have to be really, really big money over the next windows. And I think both players would probably accept that there are better players in the world than them. But to get them to Villa, they're going to be very, very expensive players. And just to touch on Villa's defensive issues in general, I've absolutely no doubt that if Mings, Konza, Torres and Kamara had been fit for most of the season, then Villa wouldn't be conceding so many goals because it would have been 2 of the 3 defenders playing with Kamara in front of them, and that's a tight defensive unit.
Yeah, I think as well. The problem with Mings now is going to be obviously injuries. I haven't heard anything about his injury. Obviously, he went off on Saturday, but I thought he was quite frustrated when he went off. I don't think he wanted to come off. I felt like he thought he could play through. So you would assume that it's nothing too bad there. Gaming and stuff's got some criticism for you, Greg, because I definitely know this isn't me because I don't even know what Slack is. But have you got Slack notifications running? Because I haven't. I've got to be honest. I've not heard anything, but it's obviously.
Apologies.
Enjoyment of the show, Greg. So you're gonna have to get Slack turned off here.
Apologies. Let me turn that off.
Pretty slack from you. You might say to have left the notifications on Greg, but yeah, Greg's sorting that now, gaming and stuff. So apologies for that from Greg. Pretty cool for me. I'm not convinced he's coming through his microphone either, but we'll just crack on because it does sound pretty good. You gonna check?
No, I definitely am. I'm definitely coming through the microphone, but yeah, we'll carry on. And as we're talking, I'll try and mute these notifications.
Okay, then. Well, yeah, hopefully you'll still be. I mean, I'm not a great multitasker, so hopefully you'll be able to still listen to the questions that I throw at you. I'll tell you what we'll do. Greg, whilst you sort that. Let's hear a bit from... Oh, okay, you sorted it. But anyway, let's do it now anyway. Let's hear a bit from NordVPN. 1874 is proudly sponsored by NordVPN, so when and you can't watch it, we want to help you. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, television. So if you want to watch some live content, it allows you to appear like you're in another country. And whilst you're connected, no one else can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. Beyond this, the service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware, which is pretty handy for you. As part of NordVPN support performance for free, this also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you've got to do is go to 1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details are also in the description. As always, we're very grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight, but if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help keep the channel running and help us too. Yeah, NordVPN is very, very helpful. So if you want to see a bit more about what that's about, go to the link in the description and sort yourself out some NordVPN if you can. Right, Greg, second half, and it was pretty clear from the halftime activity on the pitch at Villa Park that Marcus Rashford was warming up pretty vigorously, and then he was going to be coming on at halftime, as he has done. The second or third time that this has happened, Rashford coming on at halftime. One thing just around that is, I'm not sure Jacob Ramsey's going to be too happy at getting hauled off on 45 minutes on a regular basis, and it's happened twice now. I don't think he was bad in the first half by any stretch. I'm glad Rashford came on because I think the game needed an injection of the kind of facets that Rashford offers in the game. But Villa have got a big squad now in the attacking positions. You know, for all the injuries they've got in central midfield and defence, all the attackers are available. So Emery wants to use them on a game-by-game basis. You know, we've talked about starters and finishers before, but a player of Ramsey's quality, just on a completely separate note, probably isn't going to want to come off at half-time.
No, he won't. And there won't be anybody in the team that wants to come off at half-time. It's going to be difficult for him to take at the moment. And I mean, look, Villa are blessed with attacking options at the moment, so it's very much on the guys that get the nod to go and start that they've got to go and do it. You know, pretty much in the first half or the first 60 minutes. Because they know they're going to be off if not. The only one that seems to sort of survive most of it is Rodgers, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he went off in.
He got an injury, didn't he?
A bit of a knock. Though. I don't think Rodgers. I think Rodgers needs a rest on Friday. He's played so many games. Him and Tielemans. I mean, you can't really rest Tielemans at the moment because there's no central midfielders around. But you know, they've played pretty much every game, Tielemans and Rodgers, and they very rarely come off at some point. That's going to catch up with us through the season. But Rashford was introduced, and I think it's fair to say, Greg, that he swung the game in Villa's favour and changed the game. I thought he was excellent again, considering that he hasn't played football for months. He's obviously kept himself in good condition in his own time, whilst he's not really been doing anything at Manchester United. And as a loan signing, you know, you need players to hit the ground running straight away. And there's no doubt actually that, you know, him and Asensio have both done that. But I just love watching him. I think he's so exciting. Watching him attack the left flank from where I sit in the Holt end in the second half. He's just so direct, so powerful, so quick, and he looks really confident as well. And it, you know, away from him being at Villa as an England fan as well, you know, it is brilliant to see.
Yeah, you know, he's discussed a lot, isn't he, Rashford? You know, before he came to Villa, if you think back to how often he was in the news, you know, everything he did at Manchester United was so heavily scrutinised. And I was speaking to a Manchester United reporter / supporter last week, and he was saying, you know, the difference with Rashford now at Villa is that every time he gets on the ball, there's like a roar from the crowd, and that builds up his confidence and gives him the energy to go and be brave and to be a little bit selfish actually as well. You know, he's
reminds me of Grealish on the left flank.
No, I can't quite see it yet because he's
not the way he plays, but the way the fans react to it. Sorry,
like for me, Rashford he's got just about the right balance of being greedy and selfish, because I think he wants to go and do stuff on his own, but can also pick the passes if he needs to, and his decision making is pretty good actually when he gets into those dangerous areas. But the difference now at Villa is that the crowd roar when he gets on the ball. When he was at Manchester United, there was a collective groan when he did something wrong, and that was just, you know, that would ebb away at you, wouldn't it? And it would cause you to lose your confidence. You wouldn't want to be as proactive and get on the ball and go past players. But at the moment, every time he gets on the ball, he wants to drive at players. He's going through the legs of players, nutmegging them so often, cutting inside, causing problems. And he's clearly buying into the way that Villa want to play, because the passages of play and the movements that they've put together, he's been a big part of already, and he's only been at the club for a few weeks. So it's really positive signs, I think. It's going to take, I think, you know, he needs a goal quickly, doesn't he? I think just to really give him that boost. But yeah, a bright start for him.
Yes, I mean, we're all feeling very positive around Rashford, but we are Villa fans, so we do worry about things, Greg. And Zinc121 says here, I fear Unai makes Rashford amazing again, and he decides to go to Barcelona in the summer. Where do you stand with that? Because if Rashford does well at Villa, given the way the last few years has gone in his career, if he's got a manager that is putting his arm around him, he's getting the best out of him, and he's in a good environment, which I think is what he needed, surely Rashford would think then. I mean, we've obviously got to wait to the end of the season anyway to see how the season goes. It might not carry on like this, but surely if Rashford's in the right place, the right environment, and thriving and doing really well, surely he'll want to stay at Villa.
Yeah, I mean, look, another friend of mine, Manchester United fan, said at the time when he moved to Villa, he said, look, it's a win-win for Manchester United because we've moved on from him. It hasn't worked out for him in recent times, but if he goes to Villa, then he does really well, then we'll sell him to Barcelona or PSG in the summer. And I was thinking, well, it's a bit. I think if you're a player, you're still going to. No matter what happens at Villa for him this season, I think if Barcelona do come in for him, and this is just what we're talking about that comment, there's no insight of whether Barcelona are interested or will move for him, then I think it'd be just extremely hard for Rashford to turn that down if the two options are Villa or Barcelona. But he's a part of the Champions League squad. He got in ahead of Marlon, so there are some really big games ahead. Get through Club Brugge, and there could be a potential. Could be Barcelona in the final, couldn't it? If Villa get there, so that's the route.
Love that from you, Greg.
That's the route.
You're already planning ahead.
That's the route that they're planning if they're going to get there. So there's some big times ahead. Marcus Rashford's won the FA Cup already with United and played in the Champions League already. So it's nothing new, but if he can help Villa achieve that, that will play a big part, I think. And as you say, if he's happy and he's enjoying playing with the manager again, and he gets back into the England squad on the back of doing well for Villa, then that might just be what he thinks might be the way forward for him in the future. But he's going to be a lot of money, isn't it? It's going to cost the club a lot if they want to turn those deals for Asensio and Rashford into permanent deals. The fact that the transfer fees are going to be massive and the wages are going to be huge. Also, Villa need to qualify for the Champions League. Yeah, now it just couldn't. They won't be able to do it.
Yeah, UTFV. I'm presuming the F stands for fantastic in that there. He's said the same thing. Unless we get Champions League, he won't stay. We can't afford those wages, and few clubs can. I'm more positive about Asensio because I think there's probably a deal to be done where you extend the loan and have him on loan for another season, which would be helpful for Villa, I think. But with Rashford, he's right. Saturday was huge. Villa had to win that game. They hadn't won that game, I think top 4, top 5 would have been a huge ask. But the way the weekend's gone, they've now given themselves a chance if they can kind of use Saturday as a platform. But there's a few other people saying it in the chat as well, that if we don't get Champions League football, we won't be able to entice Rashford. We won't be able to afford to keep him with PSR, let's face it.
Yeah, it's a double whammy, isn't it? You've got teams that if Rashford and Asensio do really well, you've got teams in the Champions League that will be looking to give them an opportunity in the summer if Villa can't offer that. And then if Villa don't get into the Champions League as well, the other thing is that they won't be able to afford him because they're going to lose the Champions League money. That's a massive dent on the incomings and the revenues that they'll be able to bring in next year, etc., etc. So it all adds up. It's why qualifying for the Champions League is so important. And look, it's to go back. It's been a positive week, and it feels like Villa are back on track now. And it will be another chapter of an amazing story. If Villa do finish in the top 5 or win the Champions League and qualify for the Champions League in that way, because it continues the momentum of the club. It helps Nassif Sawiris and Wes Edens build on what they want to do, which is improving every single year. The finances are going to take a massive boost by qualifying for the Champions League, and we know that. And look, it helps Emery continue to build the legacy that he's hoping to build at the club. He wants to be at the club for a long time and take them on to real great things. And the early stages of that have been positive. So there's a lot of positivity, I feel now. I feel like it's amazing, isn't it, in football, how things can turn, because this time last week I just thought Villa are slipping away here, but it shows if you can go and get a couple of decent performances against big teams, it makes a difference.
Week is a long time in football, Greg.
Yeah, it really is. And if you have 3 home games in 7 days or whatever it was, 8 days, then there's an opportunity to go and make a difference, and they did.
Yeah, exactly. And Rashford for that first goal, the way he adjusted his body and the way he adapted. It's a great ball in from Cash again. This Matty Cash left foot cross, I'm really enjoying. Obviously, it reaped dividends at Arsenal away as well, but he tried it again, and it was a very good ball into the box. But Rashford had to adapt and shuffle his feet a little bit. He did so well to square that ball to Asensio, and it was an untidy finish. I'm glad he managed to connect, and the ball ended up over the line. But that goal's come from Rashford's desire and his ability to adjust his body and use his brain to knock that ball across goal, hasn't it?
Yeah, really impressive from Rashford at that point. I mean, because there was a little touch from who's the defender? Was it Kukurea?
I can't even remember.
No, it wasn't. Was it? I can't remember the defender anyway. But yeah, there was a little touch, and it just took. He had to adjust his body. Gusto, sorry, yeah, of course, yeah, it was the other side. And it just had to. Rashford had to adjust his body, adjust his feet, and square it across. And then, yeah, it was a simple tap in for Asensio, but he bloody made hard work of it, didn't he? Almost missed it.
Kind of a bit behind him, I would say. It was a little bit.
Yeah, I think. But I mean, look, he got it over the line. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter, does it? And then the second goal was, another well worked move. Clearly, I think Villa only had 2 corners in the game, didn't they? And Asensio took one, and Rashford took the other. So, these are new players that don't really know, that haven't been at the club for a long time. They're trying to learn about what it's like to fit into the style of play, what Villa want. The set piece culture that Austin McPhee has created. Going to take a little bit of time to get used to that, but it just shows, doesn't it? Because Villa have tried that move a couple of times previously from the corner and had success. You remember Bailey scoring against Brentford in the 4-0 victory soon after Steven Gerrard's departure.
Thanks, Cutler and McPhee masterclass.
Yeah. So I mean, it just shows that that it's how the players pull it off. 3 passes. Right foot, left foot. That was what it was with Douglas Luiz, Tielemans, and was it Douglas Luiz? I can't remember who it was before. No, this time it was. God, who was it against Brentford?
I mean, you're going to do well to remember that, Greg. I'm going to be honest.
Trying to think of the Bailey goal. So it was Douglas Luiz.
Wouldn't have been Tielemans because he wasn't there.
No, he wasn't there. So it was Douglas Luiz to Emi Buendia back to Douglas Luiz into the box. Bailey scores. It was
That's a similar goal, actually.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So it's Rashford to Tielemans to Rashford to Asensio. And it just shows that, if these new players are coming in and quickly getting in touch with these, quickly getting in tune with these movements that Emery and his coaching team are putting together, it's really positive signs. And for Austin McPhee, look, another win for him. I think Villa have scored 13 goals from set pieces now, which is more than any team in the division. So, he's earning his money.
I tweeted after the game, another Austin Mc3 points for Villa. I got a lot of backlash for that tweet. Our set pieces are rubbish. And then I saw that stat and thought, it's not, is it? Because we've scored more than anyone else. They can't be rubbish. It's the most in the league. I thought that was bizarre. Fair play if you didn't like the pun.
That's a good pun. I didn't say that. Yeah,
I accept it. It's very cheesy. But people were arguing with me that we're not great at set pieces, and I just thought that was really strange, because every game, even if they don't score, Villa create something from a set play that could or should result in a goal. Obviously, the goalkeeper should save it. It's a howler, but you're right. It's a well constructed move. The biggest thing for me in that second period, and I think when Villa got back to 1-1, the whole team was up. The crowd was up. It felt like Villa were going to make a real push to win that game, and Chelsea sat back and were very concerned with what Villa were doing against them. I think they went into themselves completely as soon as Villa scored a side that, when they're hit with a bit of adversity, I think they go into their shell a little bit. But Villa played really well. I thought after they scored, were measured in what they were doing, but then showed a lot of intent and tried things at the right time as well. I actually think it was the last group of substitutions that won Villa that game. I thought Bailey and Marlon just introduced something really special when they came on, and I actually think it was them two that got Villa over the line. Bailey straight away was driving, looked confident. Not seen much of that this season. I thought he was really good, and I feel really sorry for Marlon, because he's not starting a lot of games. He's not in the Champions League squad, but everything I've seen from him, I really liked. I was surprised it was Watkins that went off, but actually, that did work in the second half, bringing Marlon on to run the defenders late in the game. And I really think they both made a high contribution to Villa winning that game, Greg.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bailey more so with his direct running. I think he just put Chelsea on the back foot and caused them plenty of problems. Marlon, I think he holds the ball up quite well, and just causes defenders problems, doesn't it? I haven't watched enough Dutch and German football to know how good he is, so I don't know if he's got that world-class ability in him, just purely because I haven't seen enough of him. So when I compare Rashford, who I have seen over so many years, I know that he's got that in him. Maybe Marlon has. I just haven't seen it yet, but because I haven't seen enough of him. But all the signs are really positive, and the fact that Villa can bring on so many attacking players from the bench and cause so many problems is a massive plus. Yeah, they just won't have him in the Champions League.
No, shame. I do really feel sorry for him, but if someone had to miss out, it's turned out to be Marlon, and the other two attacking players on loan have been brilliant so far. But I think he's going to be a really useful player moving forward, and just the options that Villa have now with starters and finishes in the attacking positions, it's gonna you feel like, and it did at the weekend, that having these options to change things will swing games in Villa's favour. Look at Arsenal at the moment with all the attackers they've got out. They can't even start a game with any attackers, let alone change it. Just coming into the business end of the season now, I think Villa having those options in attack, all those direct, tricky runners to come on. Teams aren't going to relish that if the game state is tight. If the game's at 1-1 or they're ahead by 1 goal, they're going to look at Villa's bench and think, oh, God, I'm going to be in for a horrible last 15, 20 minutes here. I think Villa's recruitment in January, you could argue that they did too much. Teams don't often do that much in January. But you do get the impression that it's going to give Villa a chance of doing something special in the second half of the season, because I think the way the Premier League is set now, Greg, the team that times their run at the end of the season is going to be the team that gets Champions League football.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Villa's business now in January is looking pretty impressive because the players are having an impact. I presume there'll be other clubs looking and thinking, well, why didn't we offer these an opportunity? Because that could have changed their fortunes as well. But I think Villa have almost not have to accept that they're going to concede goals, but they're going to concede goals, aren't they? It's just going to happen until they can get this solid structure back in place where they don't have to mix it up too often, because the best teams keep the same defence, week after week after week, Liverpool. And that's what structure. Arsenal for so long didn't they? With the two centre halves, they were hardly ever out. Liverpool are another example, and it's no coincidence that those two are the top two teams in the division at present. And I feel like Villa have got a very good chance now, finishing top 5. Yeah, I think Chelsea are slightly on the slide. They feel a little bit vulnerable every time they concede a goal. They feel like they're then going to go behind. Forest, you wondered how long that would continue. Bournemouth again, you also wondered how long that would continue. I still don't think you can fully write off Brighton, because I just think they're a team that can go and put 7 or 8 wins out of 9 or 10 games together, and then all of a sudden they might be there. Newcastle got a lot on, haven't they, with their other cup commitments, but feel like a side.
So Villa.
Yeah, true. True. So it's going to be how there's just so much to it. It's how they manage it. Emery's got a lot to focus on. He came out of the weekend, didn't he, and said that the focus is the Premier League. We've got to make up for the points that we've lost in the Premier League, first and foremost. But you can't rest players in the Champions League game, can you? So it's how they manage it now. It's going to be difficult, but I right now, this time last week, I'd have said no. I think Villa are just going to miss out, but right now, I feel like Villa are just going to squeeze in. So it can change very quickly.
I'm going to start of the season. I did a Premier League prediction on Sky's. I can't remember if Sky Sports News or Sky Sports Football. I did a Premier League table on their TikTok. I had Newcastle 4th and Villa 5th at the start of the season, and a lot of people in the comments, Newcastle 4th, what are you going on about? But I thought them not having Europe would make them have a similar season to the season before last that they had. I'm going to stand by that. I think it might be that. I always remain convinced that Villa can sneak into the top 5, and you just hope the coefficient stays the way it is, and that's enough for Champions League football. Something that I don't know the answer to, and I'm hoping you do, but I'm assuming you won't either, is if Manchester United or Tottenham were to win the Europa League and finish outside of the top 5, does that mean we get 6 Champions League spaces, or does that knock one off?
No, I don't think there's any possibility of 6, is there?
Oh God!
I'm pretty sure. I mean, look, I would definitely need to double check, but from discussions last season, I don't think there's any option of 6. No, there's 5 only. That's the maximum. But I mean, look, let's just have it. There are some interesting storylines developing, aren't there? Because Liverpool are going to win the league now. I mean, we pretty much can. We can
almost, isn't it? February the 24th, and we know who's going to win the league. It's unacceptable.
I mean, it's been like that, hasn't it, for a while? We always think that Man City are going to do it, don't you? But they've had a few.
Not this time around.
No, not this time. I mean, in previous years,
it's been close, hasn't it? It's gone down to the final day a few times.
It has been close, admittedly. I mean, Liverpool had the COVID season where they were 25 points clear at one point. Manchester City had a couple of seasons, I'm sure, where they were way clear. But there has been some tighter ones, admittedly, yeah. But yeah, there are some interesting storylines developing, I feel. So, Newcastle are so desperate for a trophy, aren't they? Can they go and win the League Cup? And then does that galvanise them then to finish in the top 5, or does it go against them? We've seen Liverpool winning the League Cup last year and then falling off, didn't they? Let's not forget about that. This time last year, Liverpool had the opportunity to win the quadruple, albeit with the Europa League. They only ended up winning one of them. So there's still a lot of football to be played, and a lot of things can change. It's mad that Tottenham and Man United, both in the bottom half of the Premier League, are only fighting for the Europa League now. But with Villa, let's focus on that. There's a lot of things that can still happen. They can still win the FA Cup. They can still win the Champions League. They can still finish in the top 4. I think for me, and I'm going to stick by this because this is what I said at the start of the season, I do think if Villa can win a trophy. No, what did I say at the start of the season? I said at the start of the season, if Villa can go deep in the Champions League, and I always maintained that there's more chance of Villa getting to the quarterfinals than finishing in the top 4, and now you can clearly see why. Go deep in the cup competitions and finish in the top 6. That's a really, really good season for them. That's what I said at the start of the season. Now, I feel like I can continue with that, but you almost feel like the FA Cup's a bigger opportunity now.
It's just such a chance now, isn't it?
It feels like more of an opportunity for Villa to now go and get to the semi-final or the final and then go and win it. That feels big for Villa now. But if Villa won the FA Cup and didn't finish in the top 5, that would feel like a real letdown for the club. They'd be disappointed with it 100%. And so would Unai Emery. But the one thing that Emery has to get is European football, because he never misses out, does he?
No, I think Villa will get it in some description, whether that would be the Conference League, Europa League, or the Champions League. I think Villa will get European football of some description. But I really want the FA Cup. I really think Villa can go deep in the Champions League. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but I think they can negotiate this next round, and then you're in the quarters, and you never know what can happen. Could possibly be in the quarters of the FA Cup come Friday night as well. Huge opportunity there. And fifth is there. Get a few players back. We can maybe rotate the squad a little bit more in the midfield positions. I think Villa got a good chance. Although it's felt like a funny season in a lot of ways, and the Premier League has felt bitty, and it's been really frustrating at times to watch Villa in the Premier League. Where we are now, February the 24th, we're in a good position to make something of this season and have a really successful season. Last season, it was obviously going for 4th and trying to win the Conference League. I was never that bothered about the Conference League myself, but there were 2 things Villa were going for. We feel set here that we actually might go well in the second in the last third of the season, whereas we fell away in the last third of the season actually last season. So I think it's really, really exciting, and there's going to be some games. There's going to be twists and turns. And some weeks we're probably going to sit here and feel like the world's ended, and then other weeks we're going to feel like we do today and feel really high about Villa and feel like there's realistic expectations of doing something special. But I'm confident that Villa will do something this season. I think they'll fulfil a goal of some description this season. It's going to be a crazy end, I think. Just before we go, Greg, a few people have asked this in the chat, and I don't know enough about it. In all honesty, about this UEFA fine. that Villa have got? Where does that leave the club? Do you know anything about that? Because it's going to be a hefty fine.
I need to research that more and find out some more details before talking about it. Yes, so sorry to give a boring answer,
No,
but
that's fine.
I need to make those calls before I can clarify anymore.
Okay. There's one thing we're used to from you, Greg. It's boring answers, so don't worry about that. Right? Shall we go? I mean, you've updated on the book. We've spoke about the game. Obviously, Villa have got Palace and Cardiff this week as well, so there will be some content on the channel around those games. So watch out for that. But anything else you wanna speak about, Greg, before we go?
No, that's everything.
Okay, brilliant. Right, let's go then. Thank you ever so much for everyone in the chat. Brilliant to see so many people watching, 830 across various platforms at the moment. We appreciate the support and the love for the podcast immensely. Do keep your eye on the channel, as I said, because there will be some content coming through the week. Thank you for the Apple Podcast reviews. Excellent stuff, Greg. We've had some 5 stars. We've had some nice words in there. Brilliant to see. If we could have a bit more of that, that would be really appreciated. And leave a comment on Spotify as well. And certainly comment on YouTube and give the video a like as well, and subscribe with your post notifications on. Louis 88, no golf update. No, not this week. We have actually managed to go 45 minutes without Greg darkening our door talking about golf on the Villa show. So that's brilliant. We're not gonna go to Greg before we go. Don't forget to check out NordVPN as well. Hope your Monday is not too bad. And as always, we'll end with an up the Villa from me and an up the Villa silently from Greg.